Okay, so um, I cannot be with you guys today because I have something going on during the break. But um, I understand that some of you are doing some prep for Naclo. What I want to kind of get across is that Naclo is a competition that deals with both divergent and convergent thinking, and that's what is in part that makes it tricky. When you're first facing a Naclo problem, you want to investigate it and come up with possible rules or hypotheses that might be governing the situation. So, like, perhaps there's a letter being added at the end of a word makes it plural, or perhaps a part of a word means mother and another part of a word means father, and like maybe in the word, if you double the father, then that means grandfather. So these are possible rules that you might apply to a situation. Okay, so you want to be kind of broad in your thinking about that, and this is where you need a divergent skill set. So you don't want to rule out hypotheses until you have one that you think is pretty good. And once you have that, you have to start doing some convergent thinking. You actually have to test that hypothesis, right? So usually they give you some knowns in the situation, and you test to see whether or not those knowns work with your rule. And then you keep progressing with that rule and see how far you can get. Now, this has to be structured and organized. Okay, so this is some structured thinking. And here you're getting into the world of like making charts, but you definitely want to write things down. You want to take notes of your process in an organized way. Now, if your hypothesis meets with all the knowns and gets you a result for a significant number of unknowns, that's great. The next move then is to see, does it give you all the unknowns? And if it doesn't, then you're going to need to be divergent again and come up with a second hypothesis and then systematically test it. And you may need multiple rules in order to solve one problem. So you're going to have to come up with multiple hypotheses that all test positively against your knowns. And the only way that you can see whether or not that's working is to have a structured way of thinking. And the way to handle that is to kind of note what you're doing and to move systematically from one known to another, applying your rule. And if your rule doesn't work, you have to either adjust the rule or you have to discard it. So if it's working for a large number of the knowns, then it's probably that you have to adjust your rule somehow. If it's working for very few of your knowns, then you definitely want to discard the rule. All right, so that's some just like basic overview thinking of how to kind of face some of these problems, decide what you know, what you need to figure out, develop a hypothesis based on what you know, test that hypothesis against all of the nodes in a systematic way, chart your testing, and see how many of the unknowns it actually manages to deal with. If it doesn't deal with all the unknowns, it's probable that you're going to need another rule and another hypothesis. If it does, if it breaks one of the knowns, then you either have to adjust that hypothesis or discard it and start over. And once you have all the unknowns, that's considered a solution to the problem. All right, so there's some kind of overarching thinking about how to handle Naclo problems.